Today we got the much anticipated inflation report, so the CPI numbers for the US, and it just basically came in just as the expectations. So not much to see there, to be honest, but what is the bigger picture here in my point of view is that inflation is rolling over. You can see it has peaked somewhat here in the mid of 2022, and now all of the numbers that are coming in are basically lower and lower, and in some respect this is following with a lag the money supply M2 year-over-year change. So you can see that is the blue number that was ramping up rapidly with all of the money injected into the system when the pandemic hit, and that was causing much of this asset inflation. At least that's my point of view, along with, of course, supply chain issues. And now with the tightening of this, the monetary supply as well, it's coming down. And with a lag, this may actually show also in inflation numbers coming forward. So we'll see whether or not the market will digest this news and see it as a positive. But what I want to talk about today is actually this chart. So usually we're looking at the weekly numbers, but also mainly the monthly numbers, the delivery numbers for EVs sold. But we're just looking at the absolute numbers and not doing a lot of differentiation. And I think this chart is actually, these tables here are giving us a good impression for the yearly number actually here in this regard. For electric cars being sold in China, because it's nicely differentiating here between the different customer target segments in terms of the price points at which the cars are being sold. So as a quick reminder, this is Chinese, so 41, it's translating into 400,000 RMB. So this is the first segment, then 300,000 to 400,000 RMB, 200,000 to 300,000 RMB, and 100,000 to 200,000 RMB. So these are the rough price segments. And of course, the most luxurious here is the 400,000 and leading up here it is the ET7, ES7 and ES8 on the leaderboard, with the most cars being sold throughout 2022. So ET7 sold almost 23,000 pieces, and the ES7 14,000 pieces, the ES8 13,500. Here you can see the average sales price in detail. So the ET7 is a little bit lower in the average sales price, for example, than the ES8. However, the NIO is taking here the number one position. The next close up is an actual very high-end Chinese brand here, also a startup, and then followed by the Porsche Taycan, Mercedes EQC, both of them having also slightly higher average sales prices, actually in the case of the Porsche Taycan, a much higher one. But also the numbers you can see here are way lower, right? So that's only roughly 3,000 pieces being sold. And then what else we got here is the BMW iX and the Mercedes EQE. So NIO is totally dominating in terms of sales numbers, this highest luxury, or let's call it upper premium to luxury segment here in this price segment for EVs in China. It's quite outstanding in my point of view. Then 300,000 to 400,000 price class. It's a bit more of a diverse picture here. So the NIO ES6, which will soonish actually get an NT 2.0 platform reamp, is here leading with 42,000 pieces being sold. Next is much fewer cars actually in this class here, BMW iX3. At a similar price point, followed by the EC6, and then also the i3 of BMW. So BMW here quite doing quite well in this segment as well, having quite some volume here, but once again circled by NIO, and also the ET5 has sold 10,400 pieces and has just started ramping, right? So we should expect actually that the ET5 in this price class might turn out to be the number one for the whole year of 2023. Xiaopeng, first time showing up here with one of their higher average sales prices, but only 6,000 units being sold for the G9. And then much lower volumes in general for Mercedes for the EQB and EQA. Next, now we're moving into the big volume segment. You can see that by the amounts of cars being sold in that price class is 200,000 to 300,000, and totally dominated here by the Model Y and Model 3 by Tesla. So more than 300,000 pieces sold by the Model Y. Just imagine that. That's a huge number at a fairly high price point, right? On average, close to 300,000 here. And similar story for the Model 3. And first time we see the BRD, so BYD Han here, also showing up with a very similar price tag here than the Model 3. Now Tesla has started a very aggressive price fight here and lowering those prices. So expect maybe even more Model 3s to show up in this price segment in the future, also competing more with the P7, which by Xiaopeng, which has delivered almost 60,000 cars last year. So this is the big belly, I would say, in the EV segment right now. Really hard fight for the prices within the segment between Tesla, BYD, and Xiaopeng. For Xiaopeng, we've got news now that the CEO is seemingly looking for a successor. So that's not a great signal, to be honest. Maybe because of some of the strategic mistakes that have been made. While the cars are very solid, they may have some positioning issues, and now with the price cuts of Tesla, and I always said this on my channel, Tesla will at some point go after XPeng. It might get really tough for them to compete, although of course they also have some new models coming up, so we'll see. They are well capitalized. Hopefully they have a chance to survive. Who knows? But it's also, in my point of view, as I always pointed out, maybe a candidate for a merger at some point. Maybe they get bought out by somebody else, like a big company like Huawei or BYD. Who knows? Then next, very low segment here, 100,000 to 200,000 RMB. BYD totally dominating that one. And although for the single cars here, not as many sold as, for example, the Model Y in the even higher segment, but still in total, lots of volume being made by BYD here. Obviously, in this segment, you will have very thin margins. BYD had to start to increase some of the prices there because of the commodity prices going up. And so, of course, they cannot sell with not making a profit there. So BYD totally dominating this segment, but we'll see in the future. Maybe Tesla coming up with a Model 2, who knows? Something like in an even lower price segment, or it will be just a strategy to make the Model 3 even more competitive and lower the prices even further. Anyways, I thought this is a brilliant overview showing the positioning of these different manufacturers and the type of volumes being made in each segment and who is dominating which segment or where the main profit pools are. Speaking of profit, of course, like if you are talking about such higher average sales prices, even with a lower margin, let's say 10%, in the end, you make a higher profit on the vehicle being sold because obviously, if you're selling at a higher price point and the margin you make on that is in the end in absolute terms higher than if you, for example, compete here in a very low segment and you have a margin that might be even higher than on the high end segment here, but I doubt that for BYD it's very difficult to achieve such high margins. So Tesla is well positioned in this regard, more so in the past, to be frank, because they used all of the price increases due to demand, due to supply chain bottlenecks, and they had high prices in general and high margins on top of that. So this is great profitability by Tesla there. In the future, they have decided to forward some of their profitability there to the customers, or at least hopefully stay at the same profitability, but only forwarding the cost decreases which they're having due to the scaling effects. But, speaking of NIO, it's quite interesting. Of course, they are now at a low volume still as a startup, but in the future, when the margins are going up again because of the easing of the commodity prices, and also finally all of the NIO models being on the NT 2.0 platform, and there is less friction with all of the ramp up, then this will be an interesting thing regarding profitability. I think that's something that investors should take a look at. Right now, of course, that's not showing up in the numbers. It's kind of hidden. But I think that's also where the market has NIO currently wrong in terms of the valuation and pricing. But we'll see in the end what's going to happen. Of course, NIO first off needs to compete and continue to compete in this area, and may have to cut prices as well. Who knows? Let's see how well demand is going forward. For now, investors are clearly putting their doubts on that, but we'll see in the end what will be the real numbers in 2023. Let me know your expectations in the comments. Thank you guys for watching, and see you in the next video.